and welcome. We have a fascinating show, I think, for you tonight. We're going to talk about financial scams and ways to avoid them. With me is Darryl Dahlheimer, who is back. He's been a popular guest on the show before. He just informed me this is show number 4, which I had lost count. He is a licensed independent clinical social worker, and he is also the program director of LSS Financial Counseling, Conquer Your Debt, a new name for your department. We're going to talk about all kinds of things related to financial scams. We're going to talk about identity theft. We're going to talk about foreclosure deals. We're going to talk about reverse mortgages. And as he and I were talking before we started now, we both were realizing this is a problem that can hit any family. No matter how astute you may think you are, we can get caught off guard. So hopefully you'll have some tips after hearing Darryl that will keep you more protected and safe from a scam. Well, welcome back.
Hi, thank you, Mary. It's good to be here.
I thought we'd jump right in and start talking about some of the most common causes of fraud. And the one I want to hear first about is identity theft, because I think so many people are very concerned about that. And let's just have you identify some of the key things to be cautious about when we're protecting our identity.
Sure. It's very fast-growing crime, and it seems to just have a new face every day. Gosh, people think it's one thing to lose your wallet and that sickening feeling of, oh my gosh, where's my credit card or my driver's license? But with identity theft, they don't even need that physical proof of it anymore. If they get your social security number and driver's license and some secret information, honestly, they can pretend to be you and make new credit cards in your name, and then you only find out later. Or they can divert mail and change of an address. They could work in your name and suddenly you owe Social Security taxes. They can. We even heard of someone getting a stomach surgery in California in someone else's name, and the other person got the hospital bill years later. So it's a really intrusive, yucky crime.
What is the most common way people get your Social Security number? Because we don't have it on our driver's license. Most people don't carry it in their wallet, I don't believe. Of course, via computer, but is that the number one way, Darryl?
Gosh, it's an equal opportunity crime. We've heard of crime where people just go through garbage and find it's worth their time to find the papers, and some of those papers have Social Security numbers or driver's license plus there. And then not only do they get to use it, they could sell it on the internet. So there's websites for criminals on the internet that pop up where they can buy and sell people's stolen Social Security numbers.
So shred your documents.
Oh my gosh, yes. Shred your personal papers so it's harder to go through the yucky garbage. We've also had people who write it on legitimate mail, but put that mail in their mailbox for the carrier to take. We always tell people, put it in a blue mailbox that they picked up
on the corner,
because then it's the real federal offense to ever do. Criminals don't do that, but when they see mail sticking out in rural routes, they just take it and take their chances. And we've also seen people on their computers have their computers hijacked so that when they type in things that are private, like dates of birth or Social Security, that those very keystrokes are recorded and sent to a different computer through the internet.
Would your date of birth get people to your Social Security number if the person was a real con artist?
Oh, Mary, you ask a great question. I grew up out east, and I'm a 067 because people on the East Coast start with zeros. There are so many 424s sitting in Minnesota. That's Minnesota's sort of like prime beginning of a Social Security number. So they already have 3 of your numbers just by that. And then there is some additional coding that criminals know about the coding thing. They can't know the whole thing, but they can make some pretty good guesses.
So date of birth really is a clue that is
date and place of birth.
And place.
And then imagine, Mary, then they call you up and pretend to be your bank and say, oh, just for security, we just need the last 4 digits of your Social Security, and bang, they have those. So it's one of those things where the world has evolved from face-to-face business to much more anonymous business and a global business. And frankly, that's good and it's bad.
Well, when you say the last four digits, quite often I do give out the last four digits. I mean, I believe only to professional places that are working with me, but should we not do that?
Well, in the information age, I say it cuts both ways. So if you're initiating the call, for example, you're calling your bank, so you dialed the number and you're pretty sure of who that is then that's a legitimate request for identification. Okay. But if it's a call incoming, you don't know if that's your bank. And in fact, there's a thing called spoofing where we look at caller ID. It turns out that the phone companies have a special out that they're not willing to verify what's on the caller ID. And if you have a voice over internet phone, one of those VoIP phones, you can assign any area code you want. So when criminals are impersonating the federal government, they just get a 202 area code. And you and I look at that and think Washington, D.C., right? But they know that we think that. Or they have a gambling scam, they get a 704 area code, and we know Las Vegas, and they go like, good, so they think we're calling from Las Vegas. So it becomes harder. If you initiate it, that's one way to be safe. But if it's incoming email requests, incoming phone requests, or people even knocking at your door, you're less in control. Be suspicious.
Be suspicious. And that works for some personalities, but not all. I mean, some people do not want to be suspicious.
Oh, you're right. But my 91-year-old mom has learned to be appropriately, or the kind of suspicious that fits her friendliness. So, for example, there are many charity scams out there, places that don't actually give the money to the places they say. So my mom, when they call, she receives these calls, says, that sounds interesting. Send me something that I can look at.
Send me something in writing.
She's coming in control again, so now she can initiate this, right?
People are very surprised when you ask that, or they act like, how could you ask for that? You know, we can tell you just fine, but I think that's a great tip. Get something via mail.
You know, if I was backing out of my driveway, I like metaphors. If I was backing out of my driveway and I had someone behind me saying, come on, you're fine, I'd still look out of my own rearview mirror.
That's a great example, isn't it, of not trusting too much. You said to me earlier that a person should not open a link in an email, usually, right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because that's interesting and kind of new information.
Well, I'm a good spokesman for this because I'm not a very geeky person. I'm just barely learning. So I'm confused about it somewhat too. But here's what I've heard. Malware and spyware are these malicious programs that are out there that can come and try to attack your computer and seize control of it. And if you click on a link inside an email, so an email is sent to you and you go, that looks interesting, or I wonder who that was, that link could go anywhere. And sometimes it's an exe or an execute download command. See, I'm being nerdy here. But what that means basically is it loads a malicious program onto your computer and you can't stop it. So don't click on links inside emails unless you know for sure this is, from your cousin who said I was sending you the pictures and here are the pictures on the link. But in general, be careful about that, because when malware takes over your computer, for example, then your strong password is nothing because you're typing it in and every key is being recorded and sent somewhere.
And now you use the phrase strong password. Tell the viewers what you mean by a strong password.
Okay, so Wake Up America, the number one password in America is password. It's so not safe. And they have computers. It's not like they have people trying different passwords. They have a computer, Mary, that's, if they're trying to crack my password, this computer is checking 1 million times a minute for combinations of common words,
gosh.
Butterfly, whatever. So they just have it zip, zip, zip through, and if any of those go, it's cracked. So a strong password is not a word you recognize. It's a word or a password that has a symbol, like the asterisk sign or the exclamation,
or the pound sign.
Right, and a number and letters. and should
So
be
all
about
three.
at least all three and about 8 long. And then the other piece is sometimes it's helpful because then you can't remember the darn thing, right?
Right.
So then, and you write it down and then someone sees it. So
Right.
the one way around that is to think of some of your favorite songs or childhood phrases and then take the first letter or number from each one of those things.
So you aren't in danger of forgetting, but, well, that's very important.
It's the first line of defense, a strong password.
Okay.
And maybe while we're here, I'll just mention it's having on your home computer a firewall that's turned on. If you don't know what a firewall is, you shouldn't be using a computer at home. Ask a geeky friend. Put a
Get a
firewall
firewall.
in. Okay. Having a strong password, having anti-spyware. You usually have to buy that, but it protects those programs from coming at you. It's like a lock on the door. And the last is to be careful of downloading things onto your computer by those links. And if you're in a hotel or a public computer like the library, you should assume that someone's recording every keystroke. So that's not the place to do banking.
So if you're going to do work at the library or hotel, don't do the professional financial work. Yeah.
Right, not banking. And I even wonder if you should do email, because it's possible that's being stolen.
What about Facebook endangering us, making us more vulnerable? I mean, that could be a whole show, but give us a couple of your reactions.
Well, I'm laughing because it's a privacy expert's nightmare there. Not only is it someplace where identity thieves lurk, because imagine if our passwords ask us security questions like, what was your childhood dog?
Right.
Well, all I have to do is go to your Facebook page. They know your childhood dog, and even a picture of how cute it was.
What school did you go to?
Yeah,
and
what was the
graduate
school's
from?
mascot? It's so easy to take the top 50 identity questions, and they steal them right out of Facebook. So the good thing about sharing in Facebook is it's nice to share. The bad news is you're sharing with the entire world, trustworthy and not. And Facebook itself has these security settings that you can manage, but within the last year, they changed the rules, and all the people who thought, so it went from this list that's safe and secure, not to be shared,
Right.
to this. They just dumped this other half of things, became public. They dumped it out there, said, well, we changed our mind. And they can do that again.
So you would advise people to be very cautious about what they put on Facebook.
And to manage your privacy settings. So again, if you don't know what the privacy settings are, get a geeky friend to show you, or a young friend to show you about that. And then if you're managing it, it's okay to share information. But again, you have to realize that I'm sharing it to the whole world. I like to have a welcome mat on my front door, but I don't leave my front door wide open in the middle of the night.
And unlocked, right. Because we want to cover quite a few of the big topics, have to shift, we could talk a lot about this. Foreclosure rescue scams. How common are they, and are people biting on them? When you're
tragic.
Desperate, you're more vulnerable, right?
And you're right, Mary. That's what drives it, is people are grasping to save their homes, which is a noble thing.
Right.
And a heartfelt thing.
Right.
But there are legitimate nonprofit places that do foreclosure prevention counseling for free. We're one of them. And there are places that take your last dollar. They're for-profit and say, we'll fight for you, and then you get a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 bill. And there are places that do rescue work, and it sounds good, but here's how it works. They'll knock on their door and say, Mary, I bet your mortgage company isn't talking to you. And you go, yeah, I've tried to work with them, and I say, well, we'll fight for you. What I want you to do is sign this piece of paper here that that turns the deed over to us. Sign the deed to your house here so that we can then refinance. You can rent back from us until you get your credit repaired or until you get your life back in. And that way you won't lose your house. We'll protect it. And they know about you because the information's public in the county public records about who's behind on their mortgage and if it's a sheriff's sale scheduled. So they sort of know who's desperate. And they offered with a really nice offer, I don't want you to lose your home, so just sign this for me.
Do they usually come to the door?
Often.
Okay.
Often. They're the nicest people you'll ever meet in the foreclosure process. They come to the door or on the phone. They're experts at warming you up. Well, if I was to be the fraud person, I'd say to you, because we've heard how they work, well, Mary, I'll bet those darn people aren't talking to you, and I will. so they're friendly.
So they
You
work
sign
their way right in.
You sign it over, either your last check or sign the deed, and then you're a renter. And once you're a renter, they can do anything they want, including evict you overnight, or take the last equity in your home with a home equity loan, because now they have that deed.
It sounds horrible.
It's awful.
And if you get into this pickle and this horrible predicament, how hard is it to get out of that, to extricate yourself?
Pretty hard to get any money back. We do recommend, whenever fraud happens, to report it, because you never know. Maybe the Attorney General could catch the crook, or maybe even if you don't get your money back, there's a bandage you could put over your wound that says, at least I stopped someone else from getting scammed by that person. But it's better to shut the barn door than to chase the horse.
So do they usually come in from out of state and prey on people that are vulnerable and then take off, so they're harder to track down?
Well, a couple things.
Or are
Remember,
they
we're all
local?
vulnerable. I mean, we're only one foreclosure process
one payment away from
being panicky about that. I'd be panicky. We have plenty of homegrown fraud.
Okay.
So, for example, the places that do credit repair and take your last dollars to do something that you could get for free at the nonprofit to improve your credit, those places are right in the Twin Cities. And debt settlement companies that do settlement of debts.
And they're not getting caught.
They operate on the margins of legitimacy.
Okay. And so the tip-offs would be if you have to pay them for their advice. That's a big red flag.
Yes.
What other tip-offs, or are there any others? Is that the big one?
Any time that something sounds too good to be true is a really nice red flag.
It probably is, huh?
And I think asking people for more information or references is a good thing to check it out. In other words, putting you back in control. Again, that sounds interesting. Yes, I'd be interested. Can you give me some literature? Can I get some references? Can I sleep on it?
Don't jump. And the Attorney General's office, again, it's a very good place to call if you have any doubts. So go to them. We'll put their name up later. Reverse mortgages, I want to ask you about that, because we're hearing a lot of attractive things about them, reading a lot. They sound wonderful in many ways, but there are some problems with them. Tell us what you know that we should know.
Sure. Well, a plain reverse mortgage can be a good idea. You have equity in your home, and we don't want people to wind up house rich and cash poor later in life. So a regular mortgage, you're paying off the mortgage, and you then eventually own it. And it's the reversing that process where they have the equity of the amount that you own, and then they pay you back out of that. And so it can be an income support for people in retirement, and that's a good thing.
Can you choose how much you take out each month? I mean, is that a choice, or is there a set formula?
No, usually there's options. So sometimes you could get a monthly payment, or you could get a lump sum, or you could get a combination of one lump sum plus a smaller monthly payment. So I think you get some control. What you don't get control about is they make a guess, the lender makes a guess about how long you'll live, and they give you a certain limit on how much you can take based on their best guess about you as a statistical phenomenon.
So that all sounds good, Darryl.
Yeah.
So where's the problem?
Okay, well, the problem is really when you take the money out as a lump sum, and at the same transaction, someone encourages you to do a very expensive investment. So suddenly there's this annuity salesman or whole life insurance salesman or something. And those products can be okay, but it's just always a little bit, doesn't pass the smell test to encourage someone who's a homeowner to take out all this money and do this high fee, high commission investment here.
So the same company would be giving you the deal?
Or would arrange that deal. Even if it was A and B, A sends you to B, that's just not a great idea.
So the timing is, pay attention to that timing.
And it's a good deal for some if there's good equity in there and you need the cash. But we also saw when we do the reverse mortgage counseling at LSS, we saw a case where there was only $10,000 in equity because the housing market had dropped. And to get this loan and get access to that, the fees were $7,000.
So the fees are are substantial, aren't
Yes.
they? You don't just get this for nothing.
No, and you have to make sure it's a good deal. So go get a free observation from a reverse mortgage trained counselor. It's nonprofit, HUD approved network, and then they'll give you the pros and cons and the alternatives. And in most cases, then you feel like whether you get the mortgage or not, you get all the information.
That's sounds like the way to do it. Phone bill fraud. When I get my phone bill, I often look at the little taxes at the bottom, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are all these taxes? And I've called a few times and kind of get a runaround. But I tend to trust that they're there because it's, a federal or state law that attaches. But are there sneaky things going on that we should be very careful about?
Yeah, I think when you get your phone bill, there's enough things that happen that it pays us to really look at it and ask questions about it. We can call the billing department and say, what is this? For example, it's very common for companies to switch your long distance carrier without telling you and to charge you for that. So your actual phone provider or biller might not be the one that switched you, but they pass on that bill inside their bill. And if you don't challenge it, you've just lost money.
What kind of dollar amount would be at risk in that kind of a deal?
That might be $15 to $20 on a monthly basis, so it's just significant. There's also cramming, where you didn't sign up for services, but suddenly you're being billed for those services, and maybe they just hope you don't catch it. And there are these toll-free looking numbers that aren't toll-free, and when you call them, they're domiciled in the Virgin Islands or just offshore, and it's like $100 a minute. So suddenly you have a $100 bill for just returning a call, and so I think the phone companies could do a better job not just passing that along, but that's what's been done. So it's up to us to look at it and to challenge it. Continuing our theme, we stay in control. Before we pay that bill, we ask.
So do look at your phone bill. Are there other companies that are well known to have some risk, like the phone companies?
Well, phone is ubiquitous, so I think that's the biggest one. But I think you make a good point that if you're closing on a loan or you're worried about a charge on your credit card statement or anything, it pays to ask questions.
So be the person that's spending a little of your time double checking. I think I heard a quote once. Thoreau said, "Details fritter away one's life." And I love that quote because I sometimes feel that is so true. And with things like checking on taxes, we kind of resist it. And yet we need to be proactive, don't we?
Yeah, it's really in our lap to do it. And I think people feel secretly worried that they're being a pest or that they're dumb to ask questions. But I like to reverse that formula and say it's a sign of intelligence to ask questions, and it's your right to ask questions. Again, continuing that theme, it puts you back in the driver's seat. Well, why wouldn't we ask questions?
That's a nice way to shift it. And you and I were talking too about how sometimes a person, if they have been a victim of a scam, feels so stupid and so almost guilty that they brought it on, that they're kind of doubly victimized in a way.
Oh, and
Talk
unfortunately,
about that.
it's psychology. It's called locus of control. So if I'm walking down a street and I get mugged, it is normal for me to feel like I was dumb to be mugged or I was to blame. But that's not what happened. It was a mugger. And so with this, gosh, when people are victimized, don't feel dumb. The scammers are counting on you not to report it. I'm counting on you to report it, because when the Attorney General hears about one scam, one person, they might do some things to help that person. But when they hear about 3 or 5 of the same thing, they're going after that criminal. And that's good for our public well-being.
So you're not only helping yourself, you're helping the community, really.
Yeah.
We're getting the wind-up sign, and I want to be sure we put some good information out for you. So first of all, Darryl, as I mentioned, is the program director at LSS Financial Counseling, Conquer Your Debt. And the website there is conqueryourdebt.org. Easy to remember and a great website, so check that out. And as he said, their services are free. It's a nonprofit, extremely wonderful resource here in our state. And then the Minnesota Attorney General is recommended most highly by Darryl as the place to go to report any fraud, or if you have any questions, you feel something isn't right here, call this number. And it's 651-296-3353, or you can go to www.ag.state.mn.us. So remember the Minnesota Attorney General. Thank you so much. This has been very informative.
Thanks, Mary.
I'm taking notes and sharing this with friends and family. Thank you, too, for being with us. We'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.